Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Wrestlenomics Radio. I'm Brandon Thurston, broadcasting live and on demand from Buffalo, New York, where it is 47 degrees Fahrenheit. Joining me to my immediate south is Chris Gullo, who has survived the Twitter apocalypse. And
yeah, you know, that's what paying per month helps.
to my far east, Jesse Collings, who also, like me, never had a blue check mark to begin with. Hello.
Yeah, just when I thought I'd come close to getting a blue check mark, now it's lost all relevancy. It's like
You work for a major media publication, though.
they did a thing probably about a year ago now where they told us if you want to get certified on Twitter, like send in an application, and like my company was going to submit like en masse a huge request for verification, and they told us it was going to take like months and months for them to figure it out, and I guess they never figured it out because I think Twitter was bought after that and the verification system changed. But my plans to be verified, and I'm sure when you're verified, and I'm sure Gullo can confirm this, is that when you get that little blue check mark, people just take you a lot more seriously instantly. You get 1 million followers like really quickly. Everyone just agrees with you all the time. I'm sure it's just pure bliss, and I can only dream of such a thing. I guess I can now attain that dream for $8, correct?
Yeah, I like longer tweets. That's my favorite thing about it.
Do you make longer tweets?
Yes, yeah. Sometimes when I'm promoting things, you know what I mean. There's just not enough words.
Here's the thing we have to talk about. So Chris Gullo, you did not have a blue check mark until very recently, very much in the Elon Musk era. Did you acquire this blue check mark? And I may or may not have a Chrome extension that tells me who's paid for the blue check mark and who authentically is famous and important. May or may not be famous and important. So I have some evidence to support the notion that you, in fact, Chris Gullo, did pay, and you still have it, are paying for a blue icon next to your name. Is this true?
It is. When it was first available to buy, I got it.
Why?
I don't know. I've been trying to get it for a couple of years, and they just kept kind of giving me the runaround. Twitter did. When I saw people with a lot less followers than me get it, and like guys that work in like local bands in Buffalo were getting blue check marks with 300 followers, and I couldn't get it. Like, I was like, what is going on here?
And they don't they're not working for a newspaper, or a local TV network or something.
No, it was just it was just random check marks. So
this is surely to protect you also from the like millions of Chris Gullo parody accounts that are also out there, I'm assuming.
There is one. But
there is one?
Well, there's kind of one. So,
What's the handle? Do you want to promote it?
No, somebody whose name is not Chris Gullo has that Chris Gullo is their handle. It's like Chris Gullo 1. So I'm just Chris Gullo, at least. Somebody named Stephanie Camp. I have no idea who she is or whatever, but she uses Chris Gullo as her handle. So, anyways, go ahead.
Well, as people can tell from our social media plugs that are on the bottom of underneath our names on the screen, we were all very proactive in getting our names on Twitter very quickly.
We have occupied the full first name, last name, no space, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But so I paid for the blue check, and I'm kind of mad about this $8 a month thing because I have Android and I get charged $11.
You charged $11 because you paid through the Google store or something?
I think so, yeah.
So you're paying $11 a month to.
I will most likely be getting rid of it after this.
You've been shamed now enough.
Yeah, it already charged me for the month before this happened. So
I've been meaning to bring this up for a while now. So you've been charged more than once, I think.
Like 2 or 3 months, yeah.
Yeah. It appears that most people who have over 1 million followers have been given it for free now.
Okay.
So that's happening. I was surprised. Well, it may or may not have happened. There's no way to verify whether or not the ratings that you're seeing are really me reporting the ratings, I suppose. This did happen on a Thursday, which is the day that the AEW Dynamite ratings come out after Wednesday. Wouldn't have been surprising to see somebody post a fake Wrestlenomics ratings tweet. Don't do that if you're listening. But
Well, you just gave a bunch of people the idea, Brandon.
well, this is why I need my authenticity verified, perhaps, in the interests of the general public. But anyway, we're going to talk about some things today. We are well into the right of first refusal window for at least WWE's incumbent media partners, NBC Universal and Fox Corporation, that of the $750,000 settlement fame. And we will talk about AEW's situation as well. Of course, if you want to participate with a question or a comment and have us read it and answer or react to it, you can participate with a super chat if you're listening live on YouTube. But where shall we begin? This week on the Sports Illustrated Media with Jimmy Traina podcast, he had on, what's his name? Jim Miller? He had on, I think it's Jim Miller, right? I'm going to open this link here.
Jim Andrew Miller, I think.
Yes, he has 3 names. James Andrew Miller, who said that there are people at Warner Brothers Discovery that are interested in WWE. He knows it. He stated it as a fact, not something he was speculating about that maybe they would be interested or maybe it makes sense for them to be interested if NBA goes. He said it as a fact. WWE is going to take away. He didn't say it like this, okay? But WWE is going to take away AEW's business partner. Of course, news aggregators of wrestling information far and wide absorbed this news and made ad revenue off of it, perhaps. But we have do I have my notes out here? But we have a report from Fightful that came out yesterday that says what? Jim Miller caused some speculation, suggesting that WBD was interested in WWE content, especially if they lose the NBA. But Fightful has received information saying that several WWE executives have not heard anything to suggest that there have been any conversations between WWE and WBD. While there have been conversations with other potential partners, there have been no discussions between WWE and WBD. Conversely, sources at WBD have indicated they are actually looking into expanding their relationship with All Elite Wrestling financially and in terms of content. There were no negative comments made about WWE in these conversations, but it was suggested that this expansion will become evident soon. Collision may be coming soon, maybe other content. So there's that. I think that just throws some cold water on that. I'm apt to believe there's some good credibility to the Fightful report, considering these are WWE sources who would be interested. It would be to their interest to say, oh yeah, WBD's interested in us. Lots of people are interested in us. More bidders.
Or even to just say like,
be ambiguous.
Yeah, we'd definitely be interested in talking to Warner Brothers Discovery.
Yeah.
To you wouldn't even have to go as far as to say, yeah, we're totally talking to them, but at least give some level of interest, some mutual interest. And I listened to the podcast, and James Miller, I'm not super familiar with his work. I know he's an investigative journalist, and
he's written books about CAA. Okay,
right. I've read his ESPN book, which is very good. He has a very thorough oral history of ESPN. The book probably came out about 10 to 15 years ago. He's written a whole book on CAA, so the agency that Nick Khan has come from.
Yes.
I don't know what his grasp is on the pro wrestling industry is, and I think that's true for a lot of the people that maybe appear on these major sports media rights podcasts.
And considering he wrote a book about CAA, I would think probably not too hard for him to get information that may fall out of Nick Khan's world.
Right, which makes the WWE sources that Fightful has saying that, no, we haven't really talked to WBD more interesting, because if he's getting that fed from like a Nick Khan-led world, surely the Fightful report would also probably have at least someone saying a similar thing. He doesn't really, if you listen to the podcast, he doesn't really elaborate on like why he thinks WBD has interest in WWE. He just says,
and this
that
is a wider conversation about sports media and TV rights.
He says that
not dwelling on wrestling.
Right. He kind of just says that people he talked to Warner Bros. Discovery would have an interest in WWE, which maybe in like the most basic sense, like, yeah, we would be interested in having WWE if WWE wanted to be on Warner Bros. Discovery, but not if that is a far cry from bidding competitively for WWE with these other people that we think are going to be involved, like NBCU. He also says that there's 80,000 people at WrestleMania, which we know wasn't really true, but
It's in the press release. W's on the record. Okay.
Well, that's why WWE does the press releases, and that's why they lie about the numbers, because people like Jim Miller here will go on a major podcast and say, yeah, they had 80,000 people there, which in some ways makes me question the diligence that's going into his reporting or commenting on WWE in the first place. If
You're saying WWE's lying about how many people are in the building?
Yes,
they're counting the staff and the security and the ushers and the ticket takers and the things of that nature and the people who work in parking and the police outside and the people, and don't forget the people in the suites and the empty seats in the suites. All those may be counted.
Mm-hmm.
And the talent in the staff.
Yeah, he also says something pretty interesting, which is that he says that it's possible that Monday Night Raw could be moved off of Monday nights. That sounds crazy to me.
Yeah.
He uses the evidence saying that Nick Khan was able to convince WWE to move pay-per-views off of Sunday onto Saturday nights, which I don't know how much longer that's going to happen, because I believe the rationale behind the move to Saturday nights was this idea that UFC pay-per-views are on Saturday nights, big boxing pay-per-views are on Saturday nights. WWE needs to be in that world, so our pay-per-views are going to be on Saturday nights too. But with the merger coming between Endeavor and WWE, wouldn't it seem likely that WWE wouldn't want WWE's pay-per-views competing with UFC content, whether it's a UFC pay-per-view or a UFC fight night event?
WWE and UFC are merging, and UFC often runs on Saturdays, so it could be the case that we see more W pay-per-views, PLEs, on Sundays again. It could be.
Right.
I don't
because they wouldn't
just
want
stands
to run.
to reason.
They wouldn't want to compete with any form of UFC programming.
Have they ran against UFC a lot though on Saturdays?
I'm sure they've run against. UFC has an event pretty much most Saturday nights now. They don't always have a major pay-per-view event.
The smaller version
Saturday
fight
nights.
yeah.
Yeah, but even then, if you're Endeavor and you're getting paid by ESPN or whatever for your fight night events, why would you also run competing content? And you certainly wouldn't run competing content if we're talking about a rights deal that maybe is combined between UFC content and WWE content, like we talked about with a streaming partner, as something that could potentially arise. So I'd question that, but the idea of Raw moving from Monday night, which Miller uses the logic of, well, Monday night's a tough night for television. You've got Monday Night Football, you've got the college football national championship game, which is of course only one night a year, but that also is on Monday night.
Week of September, yeah.
It's the first week of January. The
That's
college
true.
football.
They also go against college football on the last week before Monday Night Football starts. They always go against college football on that day once a year.
Yeah. But I'm sure it's interesting because I'm sure WWE hasn't. It's not like Monday Night Football is a new thing. It was on the air well before Monday Night Raw. So the idea that Monday night is a very competitive television night is not new.
Well, they could do better, I suppose. But
would you? I don't think
breaking that tradition would be pretty big, I would think.
Right, and also Raw Monday Night Raw. It really is an institution, and with the benefit of moving to a Tuesday night or moving to a Wednesday night, the change from that institution day to a different random day of the week, would that really be worth it? Would you do better on a Wednesday night or a Tuesday night?
I think the answer is if like anything, if it's for the right price, maybe, and we're open to everybody's open to the conversation about will you have us on your network and how much would you pay for that?
But a network would want to theoretically and he talks about this in relation to Warner Brothers Discovery purchasing.
But it's not what is on TNT or TBS on Monday nights? It's not like basketball is on TNT on Monday, right? It's on Tuesday and Thursday on TNT.
Yeah.
So why would Monday even be a problem theoretically for TNT?
Because the competition on Monday night.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Which is and that's why I didn't really buy it. And also why would TNT and TBS, if we accept those as being the most likely networks to host Monday Night Raw, I guess you could move it to True TV or something somewhere else. But if it's on TNT or TBS, what night of the week are they going to put Raw on? Because if they buy Raw and they don't want to put it on Monday night, are they going to put it on Tuesday? They're not going to put it on Tuesday and Thursday because they have the NBA.
Right.
Maybe they replaced Dynamite with Wednesday night. I think if Vince is resistant to moving Monday night at all, I think you'd be extra resistant to moving to a replacement of Dynamite's time slot on 8 p.m. on Wednesday nights.
And I think
And
it's a question of what if there were actual discussions about this. And first of all, I wouldn't be that skeptical of the idea of WBD exploring it, just like I'm not that skeptical of many possible suitors exploring the idea of buying or doing some sort of company transaction with WWE. It doesn't cost that much to investigate it and explore that interest. Making it actually happen is a totally different thing, versus exploring it or even bidding on it. So if this was something that realistically was going to happen, which I don't really buy, especially in light of this Fightful report, it would be a situation where WWE would say, well, what would make the deal interesting to us is if we had exclusivity. We don't want to be on a network that has our competitor that we in public never admit is our competitor. We got blinders on, by the way. And maybe that would make it worth it. And that's a huge hurdle. I don't believe that AEW is going to WBD is going to let go of AEW anytime soon. I think maybe they would be open to the idea of having both, but I don't think they're going to drop one for the other.
right,
I think so. Do you think though they're being a little proactive in case somebody outbids them for AEW? Like maybe they're interested just by that.
Could be, but it seems pretty remote. I think
it also
Yeah.
also seems against the tide of, and they kind of admitted this on the podcast. It seems against the tide of everything we're hearing about Warner Brothers Discovery, which is that they've really trying to cut back, and they're really trying to figure out what kind of content they're willing to pay for, and the idea of them spending.
Well, we should mention too. This was sort of mentioned in the context of maybe they lose NBA, and in that case, Tuesday and Thursday is open,
Right?
And a lot of money is open. So there's that. Anything else to add there?
No, I think that's it.
So more news. Here we are. It's the United Center. This report coming from The Observer. I've got a summary of it from John Pollock of Post Wrestling. The pending return of CM Punk appears to have a location. Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer reports that AEW has booked the United Center in Chicago for Saturday, June 17th, which is expected to feature Punk's return. I guess that's the main part of it. Should I read the rest of this? Dave wrote, as things stand now, the return of CM Punk is scheduled for June 17th, for the June 17th show in the United Center in Chicago, which being a Saturday show is likely the debut of the new weekly show. The rumor of the new show name is AEW Collision, based on a trademark the company took out some time back when the talks with WBD for the new Saturday show got serious. At press time, everything was not finalized, but the building is booked, and it likely will be announced very shortly when the Punk deal and the TV deal are finalized. Obviously, with the building deal in place, the TV deal has to either be done or they must be almost certain of it. The decision on Punk returning was made many weeks ago, although there was a snag 2 weeks ago that Dave may or may not have been somewhat tangentially involved in. That has evidently been worked out. Andrew Zarian of the Mat Men podcast reported a June return for Punk in conjunction with the start of AEW's yet to be announced Saturday show, which is expected to be called Collision. Punk has been off AEW programming since September, since All Out and the Backstage fight happened. The United Center housed Punk's debut in August 2021, the debut of Rampage, where they did 14,000 paid and a gate of $658,000. So this sounds obviously not confirmed by AEW, but virtually certain that there's going to be a new show debuting on June 17th. 1 year to the date when Vince McMahon came on SmackDown and said, welcome to SmackDown. And CM Punk's going to be there. Maybe it's a soft roster split, but sounds like this is somewhat at the insistence of the network, too, that they want CM Punk back on their television because he's proved to be a pretty significant ratings draw. So, any thoughts on that?
I really don't want to get too into the weeds on like our potential roster split and things like that because we don't really know if any of that's actually going to happen. But the idea that the network is insistent on CM Punk returning, or equally is willing to give Tony a lot of money for a new show built around CM Punk in some capacity, or the relationship between the network wanting CM Punk to come back, does help rationalize the kind of backstage reports and rumors that we hear about whether or not CM Punk is going to come back, whether or not he can come back without really smoothing things over with the Elite, whether CM Punk can come back and still maybe be unpopular backstage. All of those, the reasons why CM Punk would be able to do all that would be because he is very, very valuable to AEW and very, very valuable to potentially millions of dollars of extra revenue coming in from a new television show. And that does help explain a lot of those things.
Yeah, I'm searching to see if we have a Polestar number for this United Center show from last year, 2 years ago actually, but we don't. Doesn't look like.
And this does. I'm really interested in seeing if this does come to fruition. Just what kind of schedule we're talking about here during that period of the year for AEW, because they're going to be launching this new show Collision on Saturday in Chicago at the United Center. They're basically going to try to do the first dance again.
Does it sell out?
I have no idea. I think no.
Yeah, I think it's certainly not that Rampage show in August 2021 that sold out based on a rumor, an unconfirmed rumor that Punk would be there, which he was there. That was his debut. But I think this has become a big wrestling media story. I don't know what that means in terms of consumption of tickets in the Chicago area. It is his hometown. If there's a market where he's going to be a strong draw, it's going to be here in Chicago. But 14,000 paid like it was last time, not avidly. They're not going to eat him up, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, and has CM Punk damaged his drawing ability and his popularity with some of the fans due to his actions? That's something that I would keep in mind. I definitely think like the show would be a successful show in the sense I think we'll do a pretty strong rating. I think there'll be a lot of discussion and hype for it, but whether or not the magic isn't going to be there. Like the magic of the show last year where the show just opens up and CM Punk comes out for the first time and gets that gigantic reaction and fans are crying and things like that. That magic, that can only be done once. It cannot be replicated. And I'd wonder if like we're going to watch this happen and it's going to be like this weird dollar store version of that Rampage from last year. It's very interesting. So they're running that show at the United Center on that Saturday. They're running a smaller venue in Chicago on Wednesday, the Wintrust Arena, that following Wednesday. And then the Sunday after that, a few days after that Dynamite, they have Forbidden Door in Toronto. So are they going to run another taping of Collision the day before?
It raises a lot of questions about what the taping schedule is for this. Right now, they do Dynamite every Wednesday, and usually they're taping Rampage after the Dynamite taping. It raises a question about a lot of things. Like, is there going to be a second weekly arena taping for AEW? If that's the case, that's raising AEW's expenses quite a bit. Secondly, is this something that AEW is going to receive an immediate raise in media rights from WBD because of? I don't believe for a second that they got a significant raise when they started doing Rampage. Rampage, a third hour of in-ring content was part of their original agreement made in January 2020. I don't believe they got a huge raise, if anything, for doing Battle of the Belts, an extra hour of content 4 times a year. But this is, if they have to do a second touring date per week, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars in expenses easily. So,
do you think it's possible that Collision is not a weekly show? Could it be something like bi-weekly or once a month?
If there's reports and there's people who believe that this is going to be a soft roster split, that sounds like people on different tours to me. That does because otherwise everybody's in the same locker room, everybody's going to the same venue, and if you want to keep these parties away from each other who don't like each other and don't want to work with each other, you're probably not bringing them to the same tapes. It could be that, but that's not what it sounds like according to these reports.
Right. Well, we're going to find out really soon, and we should also end up seeing subsequent touring dates.
Right.
We know they have that it's in Regina, Saskatchewan.
Yes.
Saskatchewan is another presumed taping, and that was kind of thought of. Oh, that will be the first one before this rumor about the United Center popped up. Do you think that? Okay, so I think we all know that CM Punk is a big star,
And that's a
that
July 8th date, just to place that. So that's a few weeks after the
right.
the June
So there
17th
should,
date in
if
Chicago.
it's a weekly show, we're going to need.
It's not to say there couldn't be dates in between, obviously, but that, yeah.
Right. Well, I'm just thinking with Forbidden Door, the Sunday before, they're going to have to do a taping probably live the night before. Where is that going to be? Is that going to be at the Scotiabank Arena where they're taping Forbidden Door? That would make the most sense, right? They're already going to be there on Sunday.
Another Scotiabank show the day before.
Right, with
Could
Collision.
be. I mean, that show's sold out, so it might not hurt.
Yeah, you'll get people in town, and if you do something like a big CM Punk announcement or something like that.
If you're already set up there.
I was going to ask, CM Punk is a big star, certainly, and he's certainly the kind of wrestler that on paper you would want to kind of build a show around. If you were to pick someone on the AEW roster that has to anchor their own show, you'd probably pick CM Punk based on drawing ability. Are you concerned at all about CM Punk's ability to stay healthy?
Yes.
Because I would be very afraid of building. Oh, okay, this is going to be the CM Punk show for a guy that has had two very significant injuries.
And his second injury came in the second match after his return to injury. After he
his
had
first real match,
right?
yeah.
His first match that was like more than 4 minutes in length.
Mm-hmm. And so maybe, was that just a fluke stuff? Was that a fluke thing? Certainly his original injury where he hurt his leg jumping into the crowd, you could argue is very much a fluke injury. But he's over 40 years old. How old is he
like
now?
44, 45 at this point.
So he's old. He's, he didn't wrestle for 10 years, which probably helped him physically to a degree, although he did do some MMA fighting.
He's 44. He'll be 45 in October.
That's a real, regardless of the new show or not, like CM Punk's ability to stay healthy and his ability to wrestle on a consistent basis has to be a question mark. And that's something else.
And to be fair, he did wrestle a lot before he
right,
got the foot injury.
His first year in AEW, you would say he held up very well. He wrestled on a pretty regularly basis. It wasn't like he only wrestled like 4 matches. He was wrestling pretty regularly on television. So if you could get him back on that schedule for Collision, that would be fine. But I would be worried about putting all of my eggs on the Saturday show on CM Punk being the big star to kind of anchor the show, and then Dynamite can be the more typical AEW show with the elite and other talent, and being so heavily reliant on that one individual star when that one individual star is getting up there in age and has suffered some serious injuries and has missed a considerable amount of time since he was first signed with the company. In addition to the fact that the guy's a loose cannon that might just walk out of the company at any minute. That's something that has to be a real concern. And I hope Tony is ready to take that risk if he is in fact going to build a lucrative new Saturday night show all around him.
And I want to piggyback on that with the Saturday night thing. I want to kind of talk about ratings. Saturday night, whether it's at 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, wherever it's going to be, I mean, it's not a great place to be because Saturday night people are usually out or they're at live sporting events where it might be. And
in prime time, there's basically no other choice, though.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other choice. So, like, can CM Punk carry this to have similar ratings to Dynamite? And what does this also say about Rampage? Like, why not try to get Rampage maybe to an earlier slot in TBS instead of TNT, and do that as your second brand instead of create a whole third, show here?
So we did see the trademark, as is mentioned in the report that we just read. There was a trademark filed, I believe, in February about this. We got the Times New Roman mark, AEW Collision, which I have verified is spelled with 2 I's in it. I've made that error earlier this week. So just look at the ratings. I want to think about the time slot and the rating that this show might be capable of. This what we're seeing on the screen for people watching a video is the entire monthly average history of Dynamite and Rampage ratings and total viewership. So if you look at this, this is the entire history going back to October 2019 when Dynamite debuted. And looking at the entire history of Dynamite is fairly stable. And obviously, they've had a lot of external effects in terms of NXT going head to head with it for the first year and about year and a half. And then when NXT went away, AEW, of course, did better. CM Punk came along and others came along. It did even a little bit better. But of course, Rampage started out with a massive average of over 800,000 viewers for the first half month of August and has fallen down from there. It is doing better so far in April than it was in 2 prior months, but it's averaging around 500,000 now. Some of that, I think I might actually still be excluding so I'm probably only looking at maybe 1 or 2 episodes of Rampage here. Anyway, I think I'm excluding that big episode that they did this past Friday, not this past Friday, but 2 Fridays ago when they had a massive NBA play-in game lead-in. But anyway, I mean, Rampage is struggling to do 500,000 viewers, sometimes struggling to do 400,000 viewers. That's on Friday, not a great weekday. It's at 10 o'clock, not a great time. We're talking about a Saturday show that I'm sure will be treated as very special at first. At what time on Saturday is a big question. Are we talking about 6:05 or 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern, like the old Saturday night WCW show, and even before that, Georgia Championship Wrestling show was on TBS. I expect this is going to be on TBS or TNT, one of the two. I don't think this is a true TV show. So, is 8 o'clock better? I don't know if 8 o'clock is better, because if you do 8 o'clock, you're going to be going against WB PLEs at times, at least once a month or something like that. So maybe 6 o'clock is safer, or 7 o'clock is a better time slot, because you won't have to worry about that competition once a month. And I haven't looked at ratings on a grander scale to say, is 6 or 7 better than 8 on a Saturday? I wouldn't be surprised if it's not that different.
That's true on Sunday. When it comes to sports on Sunday, that Sunday afternoon is just as good as Sunday prime time for live sports in a lot of cases. In some cases, even better. So it wouldn't surprise me if that's the time. And people are maybe more likely to be around Saturday at 6 p.m. than they are at Saturday at 8 p.m. Certainly in the key demo, I would suggest that may be the case.
So I guess my question is, a couple months into this, 3 months into this, is this show doing better than Rampage is doing on Friday at 10? I don't think it's going to do as well as Dynamite. And second to that is the addition of, is this going to be a 1 hour show? I don't think it would be a 2 hour show, but if you're doing another taping, I don't know. It's at least a 1 hour show. Is adding another hour of primary. This is not an hour of Dark Elevation. This is another hour of CM Punk content. Is this going to have a negative impact on Dynamite and or Rampage because of the addition of content here?
I mean, historically, if you look at things of like what was Raw rating before SmackDown started, or what was WCW Nitro doing before Thunder was added, it would suggest that more content and adding a B show can hurt the people's willingness to watch the A show.
What did our friend Eric Bischoff say? What really caused a lot of problems for him was the beginning of that Thunder show.
Sure. And yeah, and I would say that's probably the only reason you could say that WCW struggled, correct? Just the addition of Thunder was really what popped the balloon there.
I mean, you had a number of amazing talents there, so... Well,
You had Hulk Hogan, the biggest draw in the history of wrestling. You had Eric Bischoff, creative genius, promoter. He certainly couldn't have been put at fault for that. So you would suggest that, I mean, if it's a roster split and it's appealing to different people, if it's going to be CM Punk and FTR and it's going to be the good old boy 2 hours of television, and Dynamite is going to be the elites and the flippy-do guys 2 hours of television, maybe you appeal to completely separate audiences. But I think, as for me, selfishly as a viewer, I'm not necessarily clamoring for more AEW content. I think I have enough to watch each week, and more of the content rides the potential of making me think I just don't want to watch any of it because I can't keep up with all of it. And I do think that's somewhat of a real feeling. I do think some fans will just watch what they want to watch and not watch what they don't want to watch. But the idea of being, I have to watch all of this stuff, ooh, that's too complicated, I'm going to stop watching altogether, is a psychology thing that might take place for some viewers.
I did talk about and had the suspicion that the addition of Rampage would have an attrition effect on Dynamite, but we certainly, like, to the naked eye here, we don't see that here. Dynamite, since the beginning of Rampage, is fairly stable, I would say. And the moderate decline we've seen in Rampage ratings of late, I would say the biggest thing is the lack of CM Punk rather than, I don't know, the addition of Rampage and the fall of Rampage as feeling like prime content that you can't miss.
Right, and that's kind of, there's some irony in play here in the sense that if your Rampage is pretty easy to handwave if you're an AEW fan.
Yeah.
So it almost in some ways doesn't feel like it's overwhelming amount of content. It just feels like supplemental content the same way that AEW Dark does. As opposed to if we're going to put a real concerted effort into making AEW Collision on Saturday nights an A show or 1A show, then that might end up playing a bigger role. I think the fact that Rampage has kind of declined in its importance to most viewers has made it that effect less impactful when it comes to perhaps skewering AEW viewership or Dynamite viewership lower, right? Because Rampage is, you can skip it because it's not that important. It's on at this time slot that might be difficult to watch live at. And nothing really happens on Rampage that you have to watch to understand, what's going on in AEW. Presumably that's going to be very different with Collision, especially if CM Punk is there.
If we assume that Collision is a 1 hour show, this would put the total hours of what I might call core content, the main content, at 4, with 2 for Dynamite, 1 for Rampage, 1 for Collision. That's still short of even the combination of Raw and SmackDown, right? Because that's only 4 hours of weekly content. That's not the 5 that main roster WWE is putting out. And then if you add NXT to that, of course, you're at 7. But a lot of content, and I think the theme here, and I think what we're learning, and by the way, we'll probably, I would think, get this confirmed on, if not on, then around May 17th, which is the day of WBD's upfronts. That is a day to mark on your calendar. Be there at the MSGs. It's the Hulu Theater still, if you can make it for the WBD upfronts. This is where
Will
I expect.
you be traveling down to New York City, Brandon, for the WBD upfronts?
If I get enough subscribers, maybe. Not planning on it though. I don't know if I could get access. I don't know if David Zaslav will give me media access or not. But I would look into it. But I would think this is where we're going to have it confirmed. Maybe right on stage there on Wednesday, May 17th. And maybe I wouldn't even be surprised if we maybe get some news that there's some sort of AEW content that's going to be happening on Max, the combined HBO Max and Discovery, which is launching, I guess, or HBO Max is being officially rebranded beginning on May 23rd, just a few days later. My guess, no information, my guess would be that All In show in the UK is going to be streamed live on Max as a great way to experiment to see how many users, how much engagement can AEW convert for this streaming service. That's what I would look for. Maybe we learn about that near that date too. So again, if you have a question or comment, feel free to put it in a super chat. But I think one of the things we're learning here is sort of when I'm listening to all these media podcasts about the upcoming rights renewals, and the big one on the horizon for the broader media market is the NBA that everybody wants to talk about. I mean, it's the number 2 sports brand in all of media behind the NFL, at least in the U.S. And they talk a lot about, especially when it comes to baseball, the tonnage. Because baseball has not just 80 games, 162 games or whatever it is per year. Just an enormous amount of content. And as much as there may be a cost for fans in the case of wrestling, by the big one that everybody's familiar with is Raw, going from 2 hours to 3 hours, and how much of a burden viewers, at least anecdotally, claim that is. And we do see a great deal of tune out from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock often for that show. Is just there's a value in creating more content for this network because it gives them more content that they can put on their platforms and they can monetize and justify ad sales and carriage fees perhaps. And I think what we're going to see now that we're in this time for WWE, where they're certainly in the first refusal window for Fox and for NBC Universal. I think especially in AEW's case, and true probably too for WWE, is that obviously WWE and AEW are looking for big increases. But they're not going to just get increases because they're great, because they still do pretty good viewership in an environment where traditional TV viewership is declining. I think these networks are going to make them give them something to get a strong upgrade, which they both probably will get a strong upgrade. But they're going to have to give something back in return for more money. And I think for AEW, that is probably going to mean another show. And I've heard people talk this week about, well, maybe this means the introduction of AEW Collision. Maybe that means that gradually AEW Rampage will go away, and that will relieve us from the burden of all this weekly content that we have to watch. I mean, don't count on it. I think AEW Rampage will stick around, and if I'm speculating, I talked about it on Thursday, there are all of these windows that for AEW, they have nothing on a live streaming service. They have nothing even on a next day streaming service like Hulu. People are always asking, how can I watch Dynamite and Rampage the next day? Especially if I don't have a traditional TV and I'm not recording it on my DVR. You can't, unless you're a pirate.
And that's kind of really unheard of right now in the world of episodic television. Like pretty much any show that's on television, that's on basic cable or premium cable, has
people raise this about Impact in New Japan too, and there's no deal that Access has putting those shows on any other streaming service. I mean, really, WWE is the only one of a wrestling company,
right? But you think of every other show on TBS and TNT. I assume that those can be viewed next day on some other platforms. I know it's true for, like, I'm trying to think of shows I watch. I know it's true for like Comedy Central shows. Or
what original programming does TNT and TBS have at this point?
That's still on?
I think did Zaslav kill them all? He killed a lot of them.
I mean, like Impractical Jokers seems to be one that they push. They have those documentary series.
Is Snowpiercer still a show that TNT airs?
I believe Snowpiercer is done. I believe they aired the final season. I'm trying to think of the commercials that I see. They have like the game shows like with Dwayne Wade, the Cube, is that what it's called? The Cube. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know about Impractical Jokers. I know on Comedy Central, which is another WBD property.
Viacom. Comedy Central? No. That's Paramount.
Is it?
Let's see what the internet says. Who owns Comedy Central? Viacom. Paramount.
Okay. Well, I guess I was using that as an example because I know South Park is a show that I watch on streaming like the day after it airs on Comedy Central, and that's on Warner Bros. That's on. No, it's on HBO Max.
Yeah.
South Park has a different deal with Paramount Plus, which is much more complicated.
You got Yellowstone's on Peacock. All these things are cross-licensed.
Right. I guess
kind of early in streaming days.
My point is that like pretty much anything that airs on, I feel like basic cable as episodic television, has a next day stream.
Has an on-demand streaming source.
If I want to watch the Vanderpump Rules, I'm going to look that up now.
It's on Peacock. Idea. I just saw it earlier today. I believe so. It's on Peacock.
Okay, so there you go. There's another one. They're AEW's now chief rival in addition to the NBA, Vanderpump Rules.
And that's on Bravo. So that's on that's an NBCU. Right? Yeah. So that's self-distributed. But yeah.
Right. So it's very unusual to not have those next day rights, especially because WWE has set up that has been on Hulu for probably a decade now.
Long time, yeah.
Like they've been on Hulu a really long time. I remember watching episodes of ECW WWE on Hulu.
Yeah. Okay, that's longer than I can remember watching NXT before it was cool.
Yeah, I remember that.
But I think what we might see is some sort of addition of W content, perhaps on Peacock. My latest expectation, this will probably go opposite of what we did on our prediction show at the end of the year, but my latest expectation is that Raw and SmackDown will stay with their current incumbents, but who knows? But I do think there's a good chance that we're going to see, not necessarily by next month at their upfronts, but by the time they renew, presumably at the end of 2024, beginning of 2025, maybe the Max. I keep saying the Max. Maybe Max is the home for next day Dynamite, Rampage, Collision, as we've discussed before. Maybe Rampage goes directly to the to a live stream on Max, and isn't primarily on TNT at all. If you've got another show that's already on
somebody
the
in the chat, Captain Coons here has mentioned. I sometimes watch Dynamite and Rampage next day on the TBS or TNT apps themselves.
I've done that too. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you have
So
to have
if you are a cable subscriber.
Subscriber, yeah.
Okay. But if you're a cord cutter or a cord never, like I think all three of us, right? Have you ever subscribed to cable?
I mean, years ago, yeah. I was using other people's cable logins for a while.
Were you paying for it though? Or just being a freeloader pirate?
At one point, yes.
At one point, but at other points, no. All right, I'm gonna call the police.
I have never paid for cable myself. I do have access to cable, but only through. I don't have like a typical cable box. I have my parents'
I have
cable
Sling though,
login.
actually, so I'm not a cord. It's debatable.
Yeah,
Does
you're
Sling or like Philo and things like that, do they allow the next day content? Do they have next day content on there? For things like
Sling, you can find it on demand. In fact, if I don't
Okay.
DVR Dynamite, I can still search in Sling and watch Dynamite. But you don't get the original, as Jason Pursuer and I know. You don't get the original timestamps for the original commercials, which screws up your ability to do quarter-hour labels. But that's another story.
because it's like Sling, Philo, and Fubo, because the PlayStation one's gone, or they were doing that for a while. But yeah,
Well, there's YouTube TV.
yeah, that's for YouTube TV too. Okay,
There's a few other ones I feel like that are out there. As like kind of like it's weird like how I watch cable. Like right now, I have a bunch of apps on a Roku device, and they all have my parents' cable login connected to them. So I can basically watch any form of traditional cable television live, but I can't watch it like normally. I have to like go through different apps.
Yeah.
And some of the apps work better than the others. The TBS and TNT app could use a little work.
Well, we have now, and according to this chart from insiderintelligence.com, it's 2023, and we have now entered the era where there are more TV households that have a TV but don't have a traditional pay TV subscription. So that doesn't include, this is only traditional TV subscriptions, cable and satellite, no Sling, no Hulu Live, no YouTube, no Fubo. I keep saying Fubo.
Philo is the other one. Yeah.
The point is, there are more non-pay TV households. There are more households without cable than with it. We'll see how that plays out for the profitability of cable TV networks in general, and how that plays out and how that trickles downstream to sports TV rights fees. But when it comes to thinking, I guess, about whether or not any of these players are going to end up on a streaming service, particularly the big question I think is around SmackDown, whether or not Fox wants to keep SmackDown. Like I said, I think we might end up I said on Thursday, we might end up with part of what WWE could give NBC Universal is rights to stream maybe select episodes or maybe something, maybe NXT exclusively. By the way, NXT is up this coming September, not next year September, this coming September. So there'll probably be an announcement about that, if not in conjunction with the announcement about Raw and SmackDown, maybe earlier. But what SmackDown can't give Fox is a place to stream SmackDown. And I don't think it's going to Tubi, Gullo. It's not happening. Fox has a very different strategy than these others do, right? I think we're familiar with the experience of watching NFL football on Paramount Plus, watching CBS right there on the streaming service. We watched football or Premier League live right on Peacock, right on NBC's Peacock.
You can watch Fox football on the Fox app.
On the Fox app. You can watch football.
Yes. Yeah, okay. I have.
Interesting. Okay.
I can watch stuff. Yeah, I can watch live sports on the Fox app on Roku. I believe I need a cable login.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say that. Do you have to log in with a cable provider?
Yeah, you do, yeah.
Well, you can watch TNT that way too. Live, I think. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Yeah, that's how I watch Dynamite.
Right. And I think that's different than I'm a cord cutter not contributing to, at least, or not using somebody's login who's contributing to the cable subscription fees, as opposed to I'm paying $5 for Peacock or whatever the cost of Paramount Plus is, and I'm watching the most valuable live sports properties in the system. But Fox is not doing that. Fox is not putting those NFL games on Tubi, as far as I know.
And to go with these bar graphs for a second, and Brandon, this is something you've talked about a ton, is WWE has benefited from being on Peacock and having their premium live events moved to Peacock, because even though that number is significantly lower than some of the larger streaming platforms out there, that 20 million people is still a much broader reach than they would have ever had under the traditional pay-per-view means, and that is probably
10 times more than the peak of W Network subscribers globally, much less domestically. It's like 20 times the peak of the domestic.
And that has probably played a role in helping WWE's business go forward. Not only are more people watching the PLEs, but because they're maybe getting more invested in the product, and they're maybe spending more time watching Raw and SmackDown. Maybe they're more likely to buy tickets to a show when they're in town, and that kind of thing. I have a question about these bar graphs. HBO Max and Discovery, are you counting traditional HBO cable subscribers
I'd have to look
as part of that? As part of that 55 million, because there's kind of two ways you can subscribe to HBO Max, right? You can be subscribed to HBO Max.
I'm guessing this is including
have it through
people who pay for a cable subscription that includes HBO as part of their traditional cable subscription that also get access to HBO Max. I think the answer is yes.
And I'm sure that that Netflix number of 67 million is going to come tumbling down to earth now that they have finally announced that they are ending their DVD through the mail system.
Yes, certainly.
It's a tragic day for the few of us who are left using that service.
When you combine those HBO Max Discovery number, how much was the difference between the two?
So the reason why this is out of order in terms of, we have Netflix. Netflix is the biggest for people not watching video. Netflix is the biggest streaming service in terms of subscribers in the United States that there is, by a pretty significant margin. And it's the oldest. The second biggest is Hulu, which is the second oldest. And Discovery, if you take the Discovery subscribers out of this, HBO Max by itself is below Hulu. Probably with its traditional TV subscribers, it's probably above Disney Plus, though, which is at 41 million.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious I wonder how much crossover there is, too, between Max and Discovery.
Can I ask where Amazon Prime and Apple Plus are? And Amazon Prime is obviously a unique...
Amazon would be above any of these because there's like 80 million subscribers to Amazon Prime in the United States. But how many monthly active users are there? Probably a lot less than 80 million. So...
Right.
And
I'm like Amazon one of those people.
Information about this.
I never watch Amazon Prime.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just like, let's go see what's on that Amazon Prime.
Right.
But I will watch it on a very rare occasion if I'm looking for a movie or a TV show and I Google where it's streaming.
Did you watch Thursday Night Football on it during the football season?
Yeah. I wouldn't say like I'm a huge Thursday Night Football viewer.
All those big games on Thursday night.
The games have been very unappealing. So, but I have turned it on. I probably turned it on about maybe a half dozen times during the last football season.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, going back to the chart, talking about how like the number of games like MLB has, right? They have 162 games. We have seen MLB cut up and add special games of the week to satisfy streaming servers that want their product. They have created content. A few years ago, they had contracts with ESPN, they had contracts with Fox, and they had contracts with, Time Warner. And since then, they have a special Apple TV showing of baseball. They have a separate Peacock Sunday morning or Sunday at noontime baseball game.
And I don't think there's any information about Apple TV subscribers that Apple is publishing, but I would expect it to be lower than anything on this chart, which the lowest is about 16 million for Paramount Plus. This is my estimate based on their global number that they report. So, I mean, when we see the Nielsen chart, Nielsen publishes the Gauge donut chart every month, and it shows a really small percentage of Apple TV viewership. It's smaller than it's like on the level of a FAST service.
Yeah, and to be fair, for Paramount Plus, most of my watching on Paramount Plus is me watching WBZ, our local CBS affiliate, through the Paramount Plus app. Because, like I said, I just have a Roku that has all these things, as opposed to getting a broadcast antenna. I just watch, and I watch sports, and I watch Jeopardy, which airs on that network locally, and that's where I watch most of my Paramount Plus. I'm watching traditional television on Paramount Plus as opposed to on-demand streaming, and I wonder how that's factored into viewership.
So there's just like one point I want to make here is as we come to this point where, according to this chart, again from Insider Intelligence, that we are now at the cross point basically where non-pay TV homes are greater in number or very close to equal in number versus pay TV homes. So what we have is roughly 70 million, maybe 75 million pay TV homes left in the United States, out of something like 110, 120 million homes. So if you're on TNT, TBS, that's great because you're in virtually all of those homes. If you're on USA Network, you're in virtually all of those homes. If you're on Fox, you're on even a little bit more than that. But you're still missing out on tens of millions of other homes that if you were on, which WPLEs are on, you're able to reach a wider portion of the United States population in general. So I think that really illustrates why WWE has benefited to the extent that it has from having those PLEs on Peacock, even despite Peacock being relatively low on this list of who are the top streamers in the United States. I mean, Peacock's the second lowest on this list. It's only got more subscribers than Paramount. It's got less than ESPN Plus. But being on once a month on that service, I think has really helped them reach a wider audience or maybe reignite some interest that has contributed, along with perhaps better creative, to better business for them over the last, even before Vince left, a couple of years.
And there's something to the PLEs being on there, right? Because we talked about, Raw and SmackDown are on Hulu. Why, they've got a lot more subscribers than Peacock. Does that play a role in it? Or is that because it's Raw and SmackDown, they're probably not getting the same kind of viewership for next day Raw and SmackDowns as they are for the special pay-per-view events?
And it's not as urgent programming, right? The PLEs are the peak, the thing that people are supposed to want to watch the most. And it's live for sure. But I think it's an advantage that WWE has, being on Hulu and being on Peacock, that AEW in no way touches, other than these sort of technical ways. Yes, you can, if you have somebody's login, you can get on the TNT or TBS app and watch Dynamite or Rampage the next day. But certainly in terms of something live, or even to make it easy access for people to watch Dynamite or Rampage the next day, there's no way without going through a lot of friction at a minimum. So if, say in 2025, you end up with, where's my table? If you end up with Dynamite and Rampage on Max the next day, or maybe Rampage live on Max and Collision on Max the next day, maybe the pay-per-views after 90 days on Max, I think that really helps AEW in an underrated way connect with more fans and leads to a moderate amount of increased engagement in other areas of business. So there's that. What else have we got here? If you're curious, if you're watching on YouTube, this is the progression of U.S. subscribers for these major streaming services over time. There's not that much interesting here, I would say. They're all sort of in their own pathways here. It's not as if one has really overtaken another. If we keep going here, what else have we got? We got questions to ponder. There's a good article by John Pollock talking about the season that we're in here in terms of media rights fees on Post Wrestling. You should read it. I've retweeted it if you're looking for a link to it. I don't know if we want to take all the time in the world, because we're almost an hour into this already, but to address some of these questions. If Fox doesn't aggressively bid for SmackDown, does this become a streaming or linear play? And I tend to think that it's probably the best thing for WWE to stay with Fox, to keep with SmackDown on Fox, because I think there continues to be it's a great support system for their ability to reach as many people, as many fans as possible. And I think going to Amazon, the price has to be enormous. If that's the choice, Fox or Amazon, the price really has to be enormous to move away.
Would Amazon be interested in a WWE product, a pro wrestling product?
Sure, why not?
I don't know. We've talked about that with, Appel, which obviously has a lot of brand name value. Perhaps not be interested in pro wrestling or WWE. Disney Plus, I assume, would not be interested in WWE programming.
Highly doubt it, but ESPN Plus maybe.
Yeah, ESPN Plus. So I don't know where Amazon, which has never made any real seeming commitment at all in the pro wrestling sphere, and doesn't also I don't think has like any combat sports um, broadcasting either. Would they be? Is pro wrestling something that the Amazon company is interested in bringing into its portfolio? And much like Apple, they have enormous financial ability to pick and choose what kind of products they want to have. They're not in a position like NBC Universal where they're really clinging to a few of their major key cornerstone properties to keep things afloat.
Someone mentioned in the chat YouTube TV, and they did just obtain NFL Sunday Ticket, which they're going to run on a subscription service. I wonder if that's possibly something that maybe they look into wrestling as well, if the Sunday Ticket is a success for them.
I think that's a reasonable player to think about in terms of the Hulu rights that are going to expire in concurrence with the live rights. And I think we hear about Amazon being a player for NBA live rights, maybe. And with the decline of the RSNs, the regional sports networks, there's probably going to be more games that have national access for the NBA in the next round than ever. Especially if NBC wants a piece and if Amazon wants a piece. They're this era where you can only get the games through like NBA TV or something like that may be declining somewhat. But I think
we said with MLB created additional special, national weekly games for Apple TV and for Peacock. There's nothing stopped. The NBA has plenty of games that they could easily slot on to. They could have a Sunday afternoon game on Peacock. They could have a Wednesday night NBA night on I guess that's an ESPN night, but they could find different times in the schedule to throw stuff on. For all streaming partners, I'm sure they'd be happy for any check they want to get.
I've even heard discussion of like maybe NBA games get distributed somewhat the way that NFL games get distributed. In that, if I'm in Buffalo, I'm gonna get the Bills game on some network. On my you in a bigger market may get some bigger market team games with the Jets or the Giants or something like that. But in my smaller market, I'm gonna get my team. The Buffalo doesn't have an NBA team for me to draw a comparison with. But if you're in Boston,
the Buffalo Braves.
Yes. But if you're in Boston, maybe you're going to get the Celtics game on your local affiliate. Maybe, maybe something like that happens if RSNs are not there to make the best use of that.
Right, and so the RSN collapse. We're talking a lot about like the Sinclair and Bally Sports,
Diamond Sports, and yes,
yeah.
But is that more of an isolated incident, or is that the start of a bigger trend?
I think that's the start of a bigger trend. Is the impression I get.
So, I know in Boston, the Red Sox games are broadcasted locally on a network that is owned by the team, the Fenway Sports Group.
Is that Nesson or is that something else?
That's Nesson.
Okay.
And so I imagine that those aren't going anywhere. And obviously, like the Yankees are on. Yes, Yankee Network, and the Knicks I know in New York are on the MSG network.
MSG, yeah.
So in some of these are going to be more durable than others, I guess is my point.
We'll address maybe one or two more of these. The effect, John Pollock writes in these questions to ponder, the NBA effect on WBD, NBC Universal, and other bidders, including the streamers, when it comes to spending. Something that Lightshed analysts, including Brandon Ross, have pointed out is that. And he's pointing to that comment that Lachlan Murdoch, who's the CEO of Fox, made on the Morgan Stanley TMT but the Morgan Stanley TMT conference, where he says, they're ready to talk to WWE when they're ready to talk. This was a couple months ago now, and he said it depends on what our other moves are in sports, something to that effect. And the speculation is that maybe they want NBA too. That would put virtually every major media conglomerate, I guess with the exception of Paramount, into play here with being interested in NBA rights. And if Fox wants to save money to pay for NBA, which is coming after WWE, maybe that's something that plays into them not bidding as aggressively for SmackDown because we can pass on SmackDown and we can open up Friday, and maybe that opens up a slot and opens up money for us to attribute towards NBA games. I'm not sure if I buy that's going to happen, but doesn't mean it's not something that they're considering as an option. Yes. So
We have a super chat that's just
Sure.
on media rights here, so might as well just address it. Big Time Baxter asks, with cord cutting, do you think it's likely or unlikely Raw will maintain its core audience of over 1.5 million in 3 to 4 years since they've been steady since 2020?
I think it's more likely that that TV ratings continue to decline. I think you can almost always bank on that. Now, live sports, especially if you forget about wrestling, live sports in general have held up better, certainly better than scripted content, and have held up better than wrestling. We only have a few years of AEW to look at. We were just looking at the Dynamite chart a little while ago, and yeah, there's some external effects, but by and large, it's kind of flat. Although year over year right now, for sure, they're down several percent. The problem with WWE is there's the headwind of cord cutting, and it's hard for I don't know if it's hard for me to parse. I think W genuinely had a decline in popularity from 2016 or 17 to 2019. That's independent, obviously, of the pandemic, and we saw that somewhat expressed in TV ratings, but also saw it in other consumer metrics that don't have the same kind of headwinds. All that aside, even if W Creative does a great job of sustaining the fans that they have, it's still a really strong headwind to go against. That is the decline in the number of homes you're able to reach. And I think wrestling is not like other live sports in being as DVR proof and as being as great a maintainer of viewers as other sports are, because wrestling is somewhat DVRable. As opposed to live sports. Very, very, very few people watch basketball, baseball, football on DVR in comparison to the 10, 20, 25% of viewership of wrestling that is happening via DVR. All of that, I think, makes WWE, as well as AEW, something that's more prone to be affected by cord cutting versus other live sports.
I think that there definitely is a role WWE can play. If we're talking about WWE, there's a role that they can play creatively in helping stem that momentum being lost. I think you're right that this is a strong headwind, because you're not only trying to convince people just to watch your show on a regular basis, you're trying to convince them to watch your show and also continue to pay higher cable costs as it becomes less and less fashionable and popular to do so. And less stuff outside of wrestling remains on cable for you to want to watch besides just Monday Night
And
Raw.
as we're seeing players like NBC and Paramount kind of cheat and put their best content on streaming. What do I need? What do I need to pay this $80 for a month?
And also do dual casts that you can watch both on television and on streaming. The I do think like better creative and we've seen that recently can help turn things around if you can get a wrestler like Cody Rhodes over and keep that momentum going. That helps. Live attendance post WrestleMania has been really strong so far, and the advances on ticket sales for WWE shows remain very strong. We'll see where the ratings settle in as far as what kind of is their post WrestleMania norm. They obviously did some very, very impressive numbers right before WrestleMania and obviously the Raw after WrestleMania. We'll see where they kind of settle down into, if that's higher or lower than kind of last year. And that will give us some sort of idea, because I think most people would consider that the product is better right now and has been better right over the last few months than it was at this time last year. And so we can see, and we know live attendance is up. So we'll see if actually being more popular and presenting a better product can make a significant difference in kind of fighting against the cable decline and how successful that is.
Okay. We're good on super chats for now, right?
Yes.
So I teased doing something like this a few weeks ago. We didn't get to it, but these parties are not going to be silenced anymore. They're not going to be censored one more week here. We have hot takes coming in from two of the most talked about individuals in all of technology right now. and we have some takes from chat AI bots that want to weigh in on AEW and WWE TV rights deals. So we have you you guys probably have not messed with the Google Bard chatbot, have you?
I have not.
No, I've just messed with ChatGPT. That's
But
what
you
I'm
signed up for
with.
ChatGPT. ChatGPT's coming later. That's the main event. But we have here is the opening act, Bard, which you sign up for just like ChatGPT. You have to like be on a waiting list for a minute, and then they let you in. So Bard, I asked, what did I ask Bard? I told Bard to write a few opinionated paragraphs on what the outcome of WWE's U.S. live TV rights renewals will be. Specifically, predict which media partners WWE will sign with, what networks Raw and SmackDown will air on as a result. I made some typographical errors here, and the average annual value of any new deals. I didn't ask this to ChatGPT directly, by the way. I want because this has to be something that's connected to the internet, as people may know. ChatGPT does not know anything that happened after 2021, but Bard's Google. Bard's connected to the live internet. And Bing, who we'll talk with later, is also connected to the internet. So Bard says this about WWE rights renewals. Bard believes that the WWE will sign new media rights deals with multiple partners. I think that the WWE is in a strong position to negotiate favorable deals, and I believe the company will receive a significant financial windfall from its partners. I also believe that the WWE's programming will air on a variety of different platforms. I think that the WWE will continue to air its programming on traditional cable TV, and I also believe that the company will make its programming available on streaming services and sports betting platforms. It's going to air live on DraftKings or something. I think the average annual value of WWE's new media rights deals will be significant. It's really not saying anything here. I think that W could earn as much as $1 billion per year from its new media rights deals. Well, okay. Well, that's a pretty big upgrade, right? Because they're making 470 right now. So that's more than doubling. That's more than 2x increase. Bard goes on, I am excited to see what the future holds for the WWE, the World Wrestling Entertainment. Yeah, that's great. I think the company is in a strong position. I believe that it will continue to be successful for years to come. These are great truisms here. Maybe he's been studying transcripts of Nick Khan interviews or something. So it was pretty inconclusive. So I followed up this non-answer with another question here. Name the networks and state your AAV prediction. Bard went on this long, sort of not really coherent response, and I'm abbreviating it here. Bard says, here are the networks I think WWE will sign new media rights deals with, and my AAV prediction, AAV stands for average annual value, by the way, for each deal. USA Network, so I guess it's predicting that Raw will stay with USA Network. Prediction, $500 million. So that's an upgrade from 265. So that's almost a 2x. Reasoning USA Network has been a successful partner. I think the network will be interested in renewing. USA's made okay. And then it says the other network is Fox. Presumably Fox would keep SmackDown at 400, just under 2xing the 205 that it has now. Fox has been a successful partner, blah, 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 large audience. Okay. So that's what Google thinks. That's what Bard thinks. Like basically a 2x increase, or very close to a 2x increase. And then, have either of you spoken with the Bing version of ChatGPT? No. You have to use the Microsoft Edge browser to talk to Bing, to talk to the Bing chatbot, which is really inconvenient. But of course because nobody wants to use this damn Microsoft Edge browser, they make you use the Microsoft Edge browser, which they're always giving you prompts like, "Do you want to make this your default browser?" Right? No, I don't. I don't want to make this my default browser. Gullo probably does. Are you still using Edge?
No, we were on Chrome. We're living that Chrome world.
You were on. I converted you, I think then.
Yes, yeah. I was a Firefox guy.
You were on Firefox, yeah. Anyway, Bing has a more coherent response. I told Bing to make a prediction for the outcome of WWE's U.S. live rights renewals, predict the media partners, tell me what networks Raw and SmackDown are going to air on, tell me the average annual value. Bing says, my prediction for the outcome of WWE's U.S. live rights renewal is as follows. WWE will renew its deals with NBC Universal and Fox for Raw and SmackDown, respectively, as both networks have expressed interest in keeping the shows and have the right of first refusal. This is a pretty informative answer. Pretty knowledgeable, I would say. WWE will also seek a significant increase in value of its TV rights, as its ratings have been resilient and amid the overall decline of linear TV. WWE will also explore a joint streaming deal with UFC, which is part of the same parent company, Endeavor. This would allow both brands to leverage their combined fan base and content library and potentially attract a bigger offer from a streaming platform such as Amazon, Netflix, or Disney Plus. Yeah, right. WWE's current streaming deal with Peacock expires 2026, but NBCU may try to renew it early. As a result of these negotiations, I expect WWE to secure an average annual value of at least $500 million for its U.S. live rights and another $300 for streaming. This would represent a significant increase in its current deals, which are worth $265 and $205 million per year for SmackDown and $200 per year for Peacock. So its statements about what the current deals are worth is accurate. But saying that it's going to get a significant increase, which is going to be $500, which would only be up from $470, that's a pretty bearish response. That's like saying that I think that's less than a 1.1x increase that Bing is predicting here. The TKO stock price is not going to like that result if that's the outcome.
No, I think the Bard AI would be much more favorable to WWE. I think Nick Khan
Bing has better background knowledge here and sounding like it knows what it's talking about.
That's not important. We want put the Bard AI on CNBC and have him to talk about the WWE's rights increase.
Bing probably doesn't count the ticket takers when it comes to attendance.
I will say George Barrios' talking during the WWE conference calls does make a lot more sense having read this AI bot discussion of WWE.
Yes. Okay, and what about AEW? That's what everyone wants to know. Write a short opinion, I told it, on what the outcome of AEW's live TV rights renewal will be. Specifically, I want to know which media partners AEW will sign with, what networks AEW programs will therefore air on as a result, and the average annual value of any of the deals. Bing says, I think AEW will renew its TV rights deal with Warner Brothers Discovery when it expires, 2023 or 2024. WBD seems very happy with AEW's performance and ratings. It's not an AEW doomer, and has shown its commitment by launching a new streaming service called Collision that will feature AEW content.
Breaking some news here. Breaking some news. The Bing AI bot telling us that Collision is not going to be a Saturday night show.
A streaming service. So
it's going to be a streaming service featuring AEW content.
We'll work to confirm that. AEW will also benefit from staying with WBD, as it will have access to a large and diverse audience across TBS, TNT, and True TV, as well as 4 quarterly specials on TNT. I estimate that AEW will get a significant increase in its annual value from the current $45 million to around $70 million, based on the growth of its fan base and demand for its product. That's about a 1.5x increase, which is pretty close to being disappointing, I would say, for AEW in terms of what I imagine their budget needs to be.
They are not using Dave Meltzer's math
to
figure out what a possible number is for that new show.
Certainly not. So I would almost call this, Bing is a kind of an AEW doomer when it comes to TV rights here in the future of AEW. Anything else to add here while I take a drink?
No, I think it does pose some interesting questions for our content generators in the future on the level of credibility the AI bot can write with.
I gotta say though, they write great bios. I asked them to write a bio for me for my comedy stuff, and it was much better than anything I can come up with.
Does it this is ChatGPT you use then?
Yes, ChatGPT, and it took things.
Does it know who you are
throughout the years? Yeah,
because I think I asked it if it knew who you were, and it was like, you gotta tell me more about this person. I'm not sure.
You gotta put comedian, ring announcer, this and that. But my ring announcer one's completely wrong because it says I worked for the NWA and Impact. that's never happened. So.
Okay. Okay. I thought about especially the Bing bot, because the Bing thing, I won't pull it up here, but it has a different sidebar option where you can tell it to write an email, to write a blog post. You can change the tone, professional, informal, funny, or something like that. And you can change the length from short, medium, long. So I don't know that I'll do this, but I thought about I should have an AI week where I just have AI bots write business articles about,
You should replace me and Gullo with one of us can be the Bing AI bot, and one can be the Google AI bot.
They can't talk yet. They can't talk yet, though. But
it probably can, though. You just need.
But I've seen Dix's tweets. It's only a matter of time. So anyway, the Wrestlenomics Patreon, we have a report. I think I'm reporting reporting these every Friday is my decision. Of my analysis of the merchandise sites, I also realized. So I've been reporting W Shop, AEW Shop AEW, excuse me, and PWTs, and taking the data, taking the top sellers lists, and just saying, okay, according to these top sellers lists, if this really reflects sales activity, these are the most popular items. These are the most popular categories. We talked about this a number of times here. I realized either Friday night or Saturday, I can do New Japan too. So I've started to collect that data too. It'll take some time before we can see anything meaningful there.
We can finally see those big LIJ New Japan merchandise numbers.
We'll see.
Those Naito fans are going to be very excited, Brandon.
Yes. It's a little late. I really should have come to the party a few years ago on a lot of things. But
the Sonata truthers, will we get evidence on Sonata being a big merchandise mover? We'll
see.
A lot of Just Five Guys shirts.
Yeah. So, but LWO shirts dominating the WWE list for the second week in a row. These shirts that are in the Mexican flag colors, the Puerto Rican flag colors. This is all, by the way, leading up to Backlash on May 5th in Puerto Rico. But for the second week in a row, LWO items are at the top of the list for WWE. But the rest of the report, if you're interested, is there for subscribers at patreon.com/Wrestlenomics, along with everything else there. Also, here in April, I came out with an annual report, the Wrestlenomics Pro Wrestling Industry Report that you've all been waiting for 2022. So that is there. That is there for free as part of your subscription, $5 a month. Or if you just want to pay $6 one time, you can buy it on PayHip. There's links on Wrestlenomics.com if you're looking for it. So, Stardom. I did wake up at 7 a.m. this morning Eastern Time, and I caught the main event of Stardom. Stardom's All-Star Grand Freedom.
You purchased this pay-per-view event?
Of course I did. I won't be sharing my login with either of you though, because I don't want to get arrested. Yokohama Arena. This is, in all likelihood, Stardom's biggest live event of its own ever. The announced attendance: 5,539 attendees. It's the announced number. That would be, by a slim margin, would be ahead of the 5,500 from the event on April 29th, 2013 in Ryogokukukan, that people in my replies on Twitter say is a totally not legit number. So it probably blew that away in whatever the real number was for it. That it may or may not even be the biggest attendance for Stardom up to this point. Other than that number, which may not be legit. The Stardom Dream Kingdom 2022, which is at the very end of last year, December 29th, also at the Sumo Hall, the Ryogokukukan. That's fun to say, isn't it? 3,869 was that attendance, announced attendance here. These are sourced from Cage Match, but I believe they're all originally sourced from the Stardom website itself. So if this is anywhere near a legitimate attendance, a paid attendance, it's blown that number away from late December, which was just under 4,000, and this is at 5,000 and a half. So
I talked to Liam Jones this morning, who covers a lot of the smaller pro promotions for voiceofwrestling.com, and he said that the highest credible attendance number before this show is 3,800. So,
sure. And that's this December 29th number,
right?
Pretty close,
right? Because you can really only trust the data, I think, post Bushiroad
acquisition. Yes.
Yeah.
And other than that 2013 number, this is all 2021, 2022, and 2023. This is the top 10 attendances that I found through Cage Match data. So likely the biggest show in Stardom's history.
Mercedes Moné is a draw.
Mercedes Moné was in the semi-main event against Mayu Iwatani. Main event was Julia versus Tam Nakano. Should we spoil it? Should we not spoil it? I don't know. But reportedly, I think this is according to Dave Meltzer, and I think she confirmed this even in the press conference. Perhaps I haven't, not sure. But Mercedes Moné has signed an extension with Bushiroad to continue working for Bushiroad. So we'll see more of her in Stardom and/or New Japan.
I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe this was like her last scheduled date as part of her original deal.
Those were reports that she was trying to discredit leading up to this match where she lost the title. Yes.
Well, maybe she can start a podcast and she can yell at Brian Alvarez about it if that's how she feels. But it's extended, but we don't know what that extension means. It could be just one more appearance for all we know.
Right. So this is certainly the biggest all-women's show in Japan in many years. Probably this century, I would say. There's probably nothing else, after 99, I would say, that's bigger than this. Does that sound right? If we look at the W Evolution show, the all-women's show from WWE, October 28th, 2018, according to Polestar, the live events data website, that had a gate of $714,000, paid attendance of just over 11,000 at the Nassau Coliseum, or whatever it was called at the time, in Uniondale, New York, which has since been replaced by the UBS Arena as the main arena in that location. So that's what that one did. So it's, in terms of a gate, I mean, I don't have a great sense of what the average ticket price would be, but if we're thinking, 5,000, let's say 5,000 paid, and take a wild guess at average ticket. And ticket prices tend to be higher in Japan, right?
They used to be. I don't know if they are anymore. That was always the standard going back generations, that like tickets were more expensive in Japan, but I don't know. I imagine WWE tickets are the most expensive tickets in all of wrestling.
Should we say like maybe be kind of aggressive and say like $75, $80 or something like that for this the Stardom show? And if we say 5,000, I think we're being a little bit generous here. 5,000 times say 75, you get a gate of 375,000 if under those assumptions. So it's well short of this W show, W Evolution,
which was so successful. There were a bunch of other WWE Evolution shows in the subsequent years, right?
There has never been another W Evolution show again,
despite the $700,000 gate, which I'm kind of joking about, but it was a successful show from a drawing perspective. Yeah. If you're just talking about live attendance now, maybe a big part of that was the novelty of Ronda Rousey.
Question: was this show, was W Evolution announced in advance of the murder of Jamal Khashoggi?
I don't believe it was.
So it was announced after, you think? We can look this up.
I forget the timeline, but I know the existence of the AEW Revolution show.
Khashoggi was murdered in early October, so this show would have taken place in the very same month.
I believe. Okay. If that's the timeline, I'm gonna go and say that Evolution did exist before the Khashoggi murder.
But
I think
what I'm suggesting here is that this is an all-women's show that was like a week before WWE's Crown Jewel show in 2018, a show in Saudi Arabia that was under a lot of criticism because WWE was doing its second show working with the Saudi government just after, about a month after Jamal Khashoggi was murdered by Saudi agents. And women were not allowed to participate in the shows at the time. So there's at least an impression that Evolution was a show that was maybe a PR move and maybe a way to give the women's, a big show to do that would take some of the heat off of them doing this Crown Jewel show in Saudi Arabia.
Right, because the women were not allowed to appear on the Saudi Arabia show at that time. That has since changed, which I think has rendered Evolution moot. Velka Braka in the I probably just mispronounced his name, but I know he's a big Joshi fan, and he's in the chat, and he says that for the Stardom show, he says there were some very expensive tickets, but a majority of the tickets were under 6,000 yen, which is about under $50 US.
Okay. In terms of the biggest women's shows in Japan in history, we can, of course, look at the, I think by far probably is the Big Egg Universe show in 1994 in the Tokyo Dome.
Did you know that Dave Meltzer was there? He
was there, yes.
He's mentioned that before.
Has he mentioned that before? Yes. Well, it was his show. It had a 5-star tournament in it. $4 million gate is what ProWrestlingHistory.com has, probably via The Observer. You don't have to really adjust this for inflation, I found out, because Japanese currency, Japanese yen, has not really been affected by inflation much over time, at least the last few decades. So it's about $4 million US equivalents today. So we don't have to think about inflation too much here, I don't think. The Dream Slam in the same venue, Yokohama Arena in 1993, 1.5 million. So that too, if this gate is correct, would be well above, in all likelihood, what this show did. But just to put it in some context, the historic crossover show, Tokyo Differ Ariake, in November, 7,102. That was a show with both New Japan and Stardom talent on it. So there's that. But a big show. And in terms of, what's the number one promotion is obviously WWE. Number two promotion globally, I would say, is AEW. Number three is New Japan. What's number four?
CMLL for sure.
CMLL.
For live attendance, I mean, I don't know what the actual money generating ability of CMLL is compared to the American companies.
The revenue, the currency conversion might have that so low that maybe Stardom could be above it. I guess I have this Japanese attendance data to look at here. In terms of average attendance, believe it or not, the leader is, maybe it's not that hard to believe, that Noah year to date is the leader because it's probably skewed greatly by their Kijimuto Tokyo Dome show.
The Muto Tokyo Dome show, I mean, Pro Wrestling Noah also just did 1,000 people in like a 15,000 seat arena for a major show. So I wouldn't necessarily say that they're on fire at the moment.
So, but we do have, what else did I do? I did median attendance. Here's a median attendance. New Japan is the leader in median attendance year to date. Number two is All Japan Pro Wrestling. Does that sound believable? This is cage match data, by the way. So this is all announced attendances. I want to preface this, disclaim this. These are announced attendances. Who knows how real?
I don't think All Japan has run a tremendously high volume of shows.
Oh, I've got that data too. Count. This is count of shows. I know it says attendance here, but this is the count of shows. All Japan's run 17 shows year to date. So they've run a low number of shows.
And I would imagine the first quarter of the year, or first few months for All Japan are pretty high. I know they have a big show I think they have two big shows right after New Year's Day, and then the day after New Year's.
Do you still do New Year Giant Series? Is that still called that?
I don't know if they did Giant Series this year. I'm not going to lie and say I've been watching every All Japan show. But I've watched...
There's Giant Series in October that they used to run, and then the January New Year Giant Series. Two tributes to Shohei Baba, okay?
Yeah, I haven't watched a ton of All Japan this year, although I did watch the first two nights of the Champions Carnival, which are going on right now, which is probably helping their attendance because that's one of their big annual events, and that's been made up a few of their shows. And like you said, they're only at 17 shows.
Okay. In terms of total attendance that we can extract from this announced attendance data, New Japan by far number one with over 100,000 year to date. Noah is number two with over 50,000. That's obviously supported by that big Tokyo Dome show they did with Kijimuto. And Stardom is number three here with 26,000.
Right. The Dragon Gate fans will be screaming right now, and it's necessary to point out that out of these promotions, besides New Japan Pro Wrestling, Dragon Gate is the only promotion that draws considerably well outside of the greater Tokyo area.
And by the way, I know in a lot of cases, especially in cage match, there are some events that don't have an attendance, and I tried to extract. It's minority of events because records are fairly complete. Whether or not these are quality records is another question. But for the instances where there was no attendance for an event, I inserted like the median attendance. So we're trying to account for all events here if possible.
Have you checked in on GLEAT at all?
No, I don't think I included that in my script. Do you think they're in the conversation here?
I'm not the most knowledgeable about GLEAT, but I know from just kind of following anecdotally that they've gone into like Korakuen Hall and they've drawn bigger than Dragon Gate or All Japan Pro Wrestling or Noah have at certain times. So I would imagine that probably, I don't know how many events they've run, but it wouldn't surprise me if they're on the same level as one of these smaller promotions.
Is GLEAT an abbreviation for something?
GLEAT? Who knows?
Yeah. Like if I look in cage match, is it just GLEAT?
Yeah, it will just be GLEAT. Yeah.
Okay. I'm running a script. We'll see if we can get a result from it. Okay, so there's that. Let's finish that conversation. So WWE, number one, worldwide. AEW, number two. New Japan. CMLL, maybe number 4.
It all depends on how you want to describe. Like,
are we talking about revenue?
CML,
We're talking about attendance. We're talking about
if you believe that, if you believe the attendance numbers that Dave publishes in his CMLL notes section every week, CMLL is doing 10,000 fans every Friday night at Arena Mexico. So, like, if we're just going by sheer live attendance numbers, CMLL is probably only second to WWE. But obviously, they're not as lucrative of a market as they are as a major American company as an AEW, and the television revenue is probably not even close. And I don't know about merchandise, and I don't even know if their tickets are being sold at the same rate. The gates might be higher for AEW, even if CMLL has way more fans.
Mm-hmm. Does AAA come next? Would you put AAA before Stardom?
I don't know enough about like how I know AAA for their major shows, and I know they had a Triple Mania show I think this past weekend. They'll draw over 10,000 fans for those. I don't really know how well they're doing on a week to week basis. I wouldn't surprise me if they're doing comparably very well to everyone except WWE, AEW, and New Japan.
Mm-hmm. Would you put Stardom? I think I would put Stardom above Impact.
Yeah, I mean, Impact being an American... what are Impact's advantages at the moment?
Impact did a great rating for Impact standards on Friday, or on Thursday,
right, but do we think they're getting a lot of money from their television? They're on a network owned by the company that owns them. They don't seem to have...
live attendance aren't huge.
They don't draw well from live attendance, really, at all. Their pay-per-view sales, I have no idea. That would probably be the next best source of revenue. I don't know about that. I mean, NWA seems to draw considerably decently.
But wouldn't GCW probably be in a better realm than NWA?
That's a good point, Chris.
Yeah.
You could put GCW in the mix, surely on volume of shows.
You trying to get booked by GCW? What's happening here?
No, I'm just bringing it up.
Okay.
Yeah, surely on volume of shows.
NWA is running small venues, and they're on YouTube. Who knows how compensation they're doing? GCW is doing better attendance, it looks like, and they're also on that Fight TV Plus.
Mm-hmm.
And then MLW, which is reporting that they're selling out, like they sold out the 2300 Arena and all that. Maybe, I mean, they're doing better than GCW, but I don't know.
Okay. Do you have any other super chats? That's all I've got. That's all the slides I got.
I think that is it.
Okay.
Yes, that is it.
Okay. You guys got stuff to plug?
Sure. The Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast. We just had a new episode go up a few days ago. It's me and Mr. Warren Hayes. We talked a lot about CM Punk, and we talked about CM Punk not really in the context of what do we think is going to happen with CM Punk, or what do we think, we weren't fantasy booking CM Punk angles, and we weren't talking about his backstage fight with the Elite, but we were focused a lot on CM Punk's individual star power and kind of why CM Punk has become such a prominent figure to the wrestling media, why CM Punk scoops are so important for people, why fans just can't get enough about hearing and reading and listening to drama involving CM Punk, and kind of a focus on the unique kind of emotional connection he has with his fans and how that's really different than any other wrestler that has been around in the last 20 years, in the sense of how big of a star he is and how important he is to those fans. I posed a question. I said that I don't think I don't think The Rock, if he were to appear on an episode of AEW Dynamite, would feel as important as CM Punk appearing on that first Rampage. The Rock would be a bigger star and he would draw a bigger rating, but he wouldn't have, even a star as big as The Rock wouldn't have the kind of emotional importance to the fans, which is what has kind of kept CM Punk, that connection has kept CM Punk as relevant as he has been over the last year or so.
Did The Rock appear on Impact a little while ago? Did he do a video for
the Ken Shamrock Hall of Fame? Yeah,
that's right. Okay.
Yeah,
is that on a pay-per-view then that aired?
I think it wasn't.
Was that on the pay-per-view, or was that on the Impact before? Maybe it was the pay-per-view. Yeah, actually, yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
No, just standard Chris Gullo handles. As of right now, Twitter verified, but I'll keep up on that.
Follow him at Chris Gullo if you want to be follow. Maybe he'll follow you back. You never know.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of comedy dates, so if you want to come have a laugh, I'm getting out there more in comedy, so come on out to the show.
Okay. That's it. You can subscribe at WrestleNomics.com/subscribe or Patreon.com/WrestleNomics. And the annual report is there as well for subscribers or on PayHip if you just want to buy it alone. We'll talk to you on Thursday on Patreon for subscribers, and we'll be back on Sunday for everybody. Talk to you then.